Welcome everyone to today's webinar, and I thank you all for participating today. Today we have with us Stacey Meshnick from the Fatoullah,
Ronald Fatoullah.
Ronald Fatoullah. So I know some of you already know about our agency, some of our services. Just a quick overview. PSS is a multi-service agency who has for mission to strengthen the capacity of older New Yorkers and their families. So we provide a lot of educational programs such as the one online. And when it's for right now in our time now, webinar, it's very demanding. And then thank God we already be doing a lot of webinars, so we're familiar with that. So most of our engagement and workshop, educational training, they all gonna switch over to a webinar. And in that way, we can provide more resources and information to the community. So we all, and other services we provide, and then department we have in PSS is PSS Circle of Care, where we provide free personalized support for those caring for someone who's frail, chronically ill, or has a memory loss issues. We'll have our grandparent family apartment where a parent older than the biological parent is raising the kids, meaning like a grandparent. Also, we have our coming of age program where it's inspired people 50 plus to live with passion and purpose. We do have our 10 senior centers at the moment. They not open, but we are open for a few hours to provide free meals to the community that we still can help our older population. So if you have any question, please add it on the Q&A box. Stacey doesn't have a PowerPoint, but I'm gonna try to find how that we can share her video. She's gonna talk to us about Medicaid.
Can you clarify how long this?
We have an hour, but you can do.
Okay.
It's up to an hour, and 30 minutes or 20 minutes, people can ask you.
Okay, no problem.
This webinar will be, it's being recorded and it will be posted on our website. So if you want to visit us and see all the past webinar we have, you can go to our website, pssusa.org/resources. You will see all of the past one. But for information about PSS Circle of Care, it's psscaregiver.org, coming of age nyc.org. And all the class and event are posted online at pssusa.org/event. Stacey, you don't mind if I just keep the first slide, this one?
Oh, of course.
And, just talk over it. And while I'm gonna try to find a way to put your video on.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Hi. Great. Okay, so again, I'm Stacey Meshnick of Ronald Fatoullah Associates. We have offices in Great Neck, Brooklyn, Cedarhurst, two in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. At the moment, we're still running virtual. We have our phones are on. We're doing meetings and consultations over the phone and via Zoom online. I hope everybody is safe and well. I know it's a really tough time. And, you know, I just want to start by saying that I myself even started to have to look into if I was missing anything as part of my plan, my long-term plan. God forbid something happens, I become ill or incapacitated or, you know, God forbid, pass away. So even I had forgotten to transfer my home into my own living trust. And I did that last week. So, you know, none of us are exempt from having to do planning for our loved ones and ourselves. So before I get into the Medicaid planning aspect of things, without certain documents, if you are incapacitated and if you have not planned in advance to become Medicaid eligible, it is essential to have powers of attorney. If you do nothing else these days, you really need a very good, solid power of attorney, not the kind that you download online. If you have any type of assets, you really need a power of attorney and what's called a gift rider. This is because for Medicaid, as many of you know, eligibility is such that you cannot have more than a certain amount of assets, which is very limited. You cannot have much in the way of assets. If you do have assets, the default for Medicaid is to get those assets out of your name. And if you are incapacitated and unable to take those steps to get the assets out of your name, in other words, transferring the assets, you need somebody else to be able to have the authority to do that. So the power of attorney allows somebody, and gift writer allows someone to step into your shoes, access your assets, and transfer the assets as part of a Medicaid plan. Now, this is very odd for me because I'm sort of animated, and I like to see people, and I don't even mind people interrupting me with questions typically, because it does keep a conversation going. You know, I have silence on the other end of this thing. So, you know, and I really don't mind questions being typed in the middle, so that if anybody has a question. So again, if you have a question about the power of attorney, please let me know. But again, it's a document where you appoint somebody, an individual or individuals, to step into your shoes and transfer assets, among other things, handle business affairs, write checks, pay bills. But since this is a Medicaid seminar, I'm telling you this because if you are incapacitated, you will need a power of attorney if you have not done planning and you don't have someone on your accounts who has authority to act on your behalf. So again, feel free, if you do have any questions about the power of attorney at this moment, I have no problem. Okay, no questions. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everybody is okay with that. Also, as part of advanced directives, in addition to the power of attorney, which is for financial, we strongly recommend that everybody have a healthcare proxy. Again, another document wherein you appoint an individual. On a healthcare proxy, you cannot appoint more than one individual at a time. So it would be one person who knows your wishes about everything, including artificial nutrition and hydration, life-sustaining measures. They know your wishes, and you're appointing that individual to act on your behalf and speak to healthcare professionals if you're not able, if you are incapacitated. You can have a power of attorney, and then you can name an alternate. I mean, you can have one healthcare agent and you can name an alternate. With a power of attorney, you can name more than one person. And you can initial a box that says that either of them can act. They can act individually. Okay, so we have the power of attorney for financial. We have the healthcare proxy for medical. I don't know if any of you had attended my in-person seminar recently, so sorry for the repetition, but I just wanted to let everyone know this because especially right now, given the circumstances that we're dealing with right now. Okay. So I'm going to move on to Medicaid planning. So Medicare, people ask me, well, does Medicare cover care? If you get sick, if you need an aide at home, if you need a nursing home. Medicare is a program wherein it does not take into account your assets. So if you do have assets, you know, you can still have, we all know, you can still have Medicare. However, it's a very short-term thing. It provides very short-term benefits. If you have a hospital stay, if you're in the hospital for 3 days or more, and then you need a nursing home, and you are going to get some kind of skilled care, in other words, rehab, occupational therapy, physical therapy, oxygen, feeding tube, that's known as quote unquote skilled care. Medicare will cover the first 20 days of the nursing home in full. And day 21 through 100, there is a co-payment of, I have to double check the numbers, 100 and I think it's $170 a day. So if you don't have supplemental insurance to cover day 21 through day 100, you will have to privately pay. Or if you have done Medicaid planning, Medicaid will start to cover at the point at which you need to pay privately. So again, I'm just going over before we go into the Medicaid, what Medicare covers. Okay, if you have long-term care insurance, hopefully you have a good policy that will cover care at home and care in a nursing home. So that's Medicare in a nursing home. Medicare at home is also very limited. You can get a few hours a day of care for a limited period of time. So again, a lot of people are under the misconception, you know, they come into my office and say, oh, well, I have Medicare. I don't need to do planning. That is not the case. If you don't have a long-term care policy, Medicare is not going to cut it for long-term care. So let's talk about Medicaid. Now, Medicaid is a means-tested program. That means that it is based on financial need. It's based upon the means of the client. So if you have assets, let's talk about the, the requirements. In order to qualify for Medicaid in 2020, an individual, one person cannot have more than $15,750. That's not very much money. I'm just asking, it's not very much money. And a lot of our clients obviously have more than that and have not planned in advance by divesting themselves in any way. Now, there are two kinds of Medicaid: Medicaid at home. It's called Medicaid home care, and Medicaid in a nursing home, Medicaid nursing home care or institutional Medicaid. For either or both types of Medicaid, an individual may not have more than the $15,750 in assets. Now, let me be clear. Assets means, your accounts, your home, any financial institution accounts, stocks, bonds, cash policies of life insurance, cash values of life insurance policies. Okay, this is the asset bucket. That's what I call it, the asset bucket. So people get confused between, they say, oh, well, I get Social Security. That is not on the asset, in the asset bucket. That is in the income bucket. There's the asset side and the income side. And so we have the asset side of $15,750. In order to, so if you are at home and you need Medicaid, you cannot, if you have over $895 a month, you have what's called surplus income. That's excess income over the $895. So for example, if you have $1,895 in income, even if you have below the asset level, let's say you have $10,000. I'm on a webinar.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I thought I hit do not disturb. If you have $1,895, you have $1,000 surplus. Well, okay, so there are things to do with that $1,000 surplus. So let's start with the community Medicaid at home first. You have assets. You need to get them out of your name. That is the default for Medicaid, getting assets out of your name to get it down, your assets down to $15,750. So you can transfer to individuals, okay, spouse, friend, child, nephew, niece, and become eligible for Medicaid. You can also transfer assets into what's called an irrevocable trust, which I can get to after if we have time. So again, default being assets transfer out of your name to get Medicaid eligibility. Now, there are different rules for Medicaid at home care, as there are for nursing home. So we're talking about the home care Medicaid rules now. You can transfer your assets to anybody, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a child, whether it's a niece or nephew, and become eligible. If you transfer your assets this month in March, you will be eligible for community Medicaid at home as of April 1st. There is no period of ineligibility. There's no, there's no window. There's no 5-year look back. There is no effect if you need community Medicaid at home. You will be eligible even if the next following month, even after transferring your assets. Any questions about that? Again, it's very weird to not see people on the other side. Okay, so
yeah, I'm here. I'm still looking on the Q&A box for you. If we have a question, I'll let you know.
Okay, all right.
I know it's hard to just if people are listening, but I'm pretty sure everybody's listening because we have quite a few people online right now. So
okay, great.
Everybody's
very interactive.
I know. But
Okay.
it's good. It's good. Thank you again. Mhm.
Okay, so again, community Medicaid, where were we? Community Medicaid, transfer of assets, no effect to anybody, okay? So that's the asset part of it. What about the income part of it? Well, if you have surplus income, like I said, over the $895, let's, for example, say it's $1,000, you actually can preserve your monthly surplus by funneling it into what's called a pooled income trust. There are organizations out there that pool together the income of disabled people, and then they have a separate account for you, and they pay your bills in the community, your maintenance or your rent or your Con Ed bill or your cable bill. As long as they're in your name, it's for you. The money is preserved. The income, the monthly income is preserved by using the pool trust. So I know a lot of people, they come in, they've read something and they say, I want a pool trust. They don't really know what it means or what it is, but I explain it as it's a way to preserve your monthly extra income. If your monthly income is over the Medicaid allowable level of $895. If you're a couple on Medicaid, the income level is $1,284. Okay, so that's the income part of Medicaid at home. We said there's Medicaid at home, there's Medicaid in a nursing home, there's an asset bucket, there's an income bucket. So now there are other considerations, of course, when transferring assets out of your name. It's not just willy-nilly, okay, I'm just going to give my, I'm going to give my house to, my daughter. I'm going to, give my SOC account, my financial account to my nephew. When you see an elder care attorney, when you see us, we have to take into consideration other things like capital gains tax, for example. Because if you transfer a home that you paid $50,000 for, and it's now worth $1 million, which is not far-fetched in New York City area, if you transfer that home outright to a relative, they are going to take on that $100,000, or if you paid $100,000 for the house, that is going to be their starting point when they go to sell to determine their capital gains tax. So in other words, if you paid $100,000 and you just straight out give a home to your daughter, niece, nephew, their starting point, if you don't do it the right way, their starting point is going to be $100,000. If they sell it for $1 million, they have $900,000 in capital gains, and they're going to pay a hefty capital gains tax. So it has to be done right. I do have clients, a lot of clients coming in with deeds, and they just were not done correctly. We do have to take into account a lot of different things. Okay, so while you can just make transfers of assets, even appreciated stock, although of course we know the stock market at the moment, but appreciated stock in an investment account, you don't just transfer over an investment account to get eligible for Medicaid. You may have to put it into a trust so you don't have that problem with the person you're giving it to having such a big profit when they go to sell it. Again, I won't get too deep into that. It's confusing, but just know you can transfer assets, become relatively immediately financially eligible for home care, community Medicaid at home. I want to also note that community Medicaid also covers assisted living, Medicaid licensed assisted living, not a private assisted living that could cost many $1,000s a month. Medicaid assisted living, and there are a few decent Medicaid assisted living facilities. So that is community Medicaid. So let's, if there are no questions about, I can get back to it, but if there are no questions about community Medicaid, I will go on to nursing home Medicaid. So remember, we talked about the asset bucket, the income bucket. Now, if you transfer assets to a spouse, let's say we have husband and wife, and husband gets ill. He gets ill today, God forbid, and he needs a nursing home this month. Husband can transfer all of his assets to wife as a spouse and be, again, same as community. He can become pretty much immediately financially eligible for Medicaid. He transfers his assets to his wife in March because his assets are over the allowable $15,750 amount. He can transfer assets to his wife and be eligible for nursing home Medicaid the following month. So in other words, the legal terms are a spouse transfer to a spouse is an exempt transfer. It has no effect on nursing home Medicaid. Now, what does have an effect on nursing home Medicaid is transfers to someone other than a spouse. Oh, another exempt individual is a disabled child. If you have a disabled child and you want to transfer assets for their sole benefit, you can transfer assets into a trust for the sole benefit of that disabled child. The trust has to be worded properly to be for the sole benefit, but you can transfer assets into a trust for the sole benefit of your disabled child and be immediately eligible for nursing home Medicaid. So what happens is, just practically speaking, when you apply for nursing home Medicaid, they go back 5 years. You've heard of that. Oh, so someone does want, some slides. I don't know if you want to add some slides now, if I can, Jackie can send them to you.
I do have some slides from you, but I'm not sure it's the same one that we're talking about today.
Is it Medicaid slide?
I can't, while you're talking, speaking to everybody, I'm gonna upload it and
okay. Okay, so again, I'm trying to do this in an organized fashion. I don't usually use slides in my live presentation, and we didn't have that. So, we have available slides, we just weren't using it today. So we'll try to get some slides up there. But I've been talking about, again, just so it's organized, Medicaid eligibility, the income levels, the asset levels. What I can get you is our Medicaid in New York article. And it is like about 20 pages discussing Medicaid eligibility. So I don't know if you want Jackie to send you that, and you can post that. Okay, so we talked about nursing home Medicaid. So I'm on the part where I was saying that in order to qualify for nursing home Medicaid, you put in an application and they look back and see what you have done with your assets over the last 5 years. Because they want to see if you have under the $15,750 and you're eligible, they want to see, okay, did you give away any money in the past 5 years? Okay, now, if you gave away money to your spouse, what did I say? I said it's an exempt transfer, right? If you give money to a child who's deemed disabled, who's on disability, let's say, it has no effect on nursing home Medicaid. So if, for argument's sake, you had, $300,000 and you gave it to your spouse, that has no effect on nursing home Medicaid. A spousal transfer has no effect, okay? So Medicaid, now what if you did transfer assets, which we often recommend to people? They come into my office, they want to plan in advance. We don't have a crystal ball, but they want to plan in advance, thinking they're not going to need a nursing home, and they do want to make transfers. And you know what? They may not have a spouse. We do transfers. Please get that to her because she wants to share it. That, okay.
Tashina?
I'm on the,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so we're going to get you the Medicaid in New York article. Okay, so if you don't have a spouse to transfer assets to, but and you want to do this in advance, let's say you can transfer assets into what's called an irrevocable trust that holds on to your money. You choose a trustee and they hold on to your assets. You can get the income from the assets, but you cannot touch the asset. A lot of people, we transfer homes into an irrevocable trust because it doesn't change your life in any way. If you transfer assets into an irrevocable trust and you need a nursing home after 5 years, after that window, that house is off the table. It does not count. So for people who don't have a spouse to transfer to, that is one option, an irrevocable trust. if you transfer assets to an irrevocable trust or to a person, a niece, nephew, son, daughter, there are going to be ramifications, but we can always protect some of your assets. Please know we can always, even if you come into our office today and you need a nursing home, or do this virtually now, meet with us today, we can help you to save half of your assets. So let me give you an example. And again, this will be in the Medicaid article that we're going to put out to you all. If you live in New York City, Medicaid says, forget about the New York City thing. When you apply for nursing home Medicaid, they say, what have you done with your money in the last 5 years? And you're going to say, well, I transferred my money to a trust or to my niece, nephew, friend. Oh, Medicaid is going to say, well, in New York City, for 2020, for every $12,844, let's just round it to 13, for every $13,000 that you gave away, you cannot get Medicaid now for 1 month. So you've gone into the nursing home, you've given away money. For every $13,000 that you gave away, you have to pay for 1 month in the nursing home. So for argument's sake, let's say you gave away $130,000. If we were live, I would ask you how many months period, ineligibility that would cost you. But we were not live and I can't see you and I can't quiz you here, but so if you give away $130,000, we divide that by $13,000, you are not eligible for 10 months. Now, that's not good, but if you come into my office with $130,000 and need a nursing home now, I would come up with a plan whereby we would likely transfer half of that $130,000. You can give away to a trust or to a person $65,000. That would make you, once we apply for Medicaid for you in the nursing home, that would make you ineligible for Medicaid for 5 months. You see, you gave away 65. We divide it by the 13. You cannot get Medicaid for 5 months. And guess what? We have the other 65,000, right? We said you have $130,000. You transfer 1/2. Medicaid says you gave away 60. We're applying for nursing home Medicaid. You gave away $65,000. They divide it by $13,000, and you cannot get Medicaid for 5 months. Well, you have the other $65,000 to pay for the 5 months. Now, again, this is a very simplified way of my explaining it, because really it's called a gift loan. We give away half of the money, half of your assets, let's say the 65, and then we loan to somebody, one of your relatives or that same person, 65, and that person pays you back $13,000 a month for 5 months, and that covers the nursing home. My main point, if you walk away with nothing else, is that even if you have assets and need a nursing home today, you can be eligible for nursing home Medicaid in a period of time and preserve half of your assets. And if you have a spouse, of course, you can preserve all of your assets. Now, I want to just go back to the spouse transfer for a minute. If you transfer assets to your spouse, and like I said, when you apply for any kind of Medicaid, actually, Medicaid's going to say, oh, okay, what does your spouse have? Because they're a legally responsible relative, and we want to see what their means are. If your spouse has a home in which they are living, that house does not count because the spouse needs somewhere to live, and that's part of the laws and the rules that we don't want to impoverish spouses. So a home in which your spouse lives does not count, is exempt. That's not to say we want to leave the house in the spouse's name forever, but if you need a nursing home and you transfer your home to your spouse, it's exempt. Even if you don't transfer your home to the spouse, it's exempt because it's to protect the spouse. Now, if your spouse has more than, and again, this is all in this article that we're sending you, if your spouse has more than $74,820, depending on how much over, they have to say, although I have over the legal amount, the statutory amount of a spouse, I am going to sign something that says, I'm not going to contribute to my husband. If the husband is sick and you have a wife with money, wife says, I'm going to sign something. It's called a spousal refusal. A lot of people have heard that term. I will sign a spousal refusal and I might apply for Medicaid for my husband. What happens then? Well, Medicaid looks and says, okay, wife has, and now remember I said that there's an asset bucket and an income bucket. We look at assets differently and income differently. They look to see, I told you that there's an asset. They look and see if you have more than $74,820 up to a maximum of $128,640. I'm not going to bore you with, the numbers are in the sheet. But as far as on the income side, they say, oh, do you have, spouse, do you have over $3,216? If you don't have more than $3,216 a month in income as a spouse of a sick person who's applying for Medicaid, then you are not signing a spousal refusal for the income part. You don't have you're not in excess of the spousal income amount. Okay, so that's the income side. Spousal refusal, if you have over, on the income side, if you have over, and look, I'll show you. Okay, great. Do I have access? Can we go to the page 26 because that has the numbers on it?
Okay.
Can I? Or you?
You don't have control of it unless you want to put it on the computer for you, on your side. But I'll get it on 26, you said?
So I'm talking about these allowances for Medicaid applicants and spouses. We talked about on page 26. Well, maybe you don't have the same one. Go up, sorry. Anyway, monthly, again, well, I'll probably, if you can get the names of the people that are here today, I will make sure we email. I will make sure that we email the 2020 Medicaid in New York article to you personally, each of you, okay?
Okay.
Because I'm giving these numbers and, they can look at the numbers. Okay, so where were we? Oh, spousal, you need a nursing home or even home care. Your spouse says, I have over, I have over 74,000. Let's say I have $200,000. Then when you apply for Medicaid for your husband, you are going to sign a spousal refusal. Now, what does that mean? It's nothing to be afraid of. Yeah, this is the, no, this is not the right one. Let me just, Jackie. Someone posted an old article. It's not the 2020. All right. So sorry about these technical errors. Okay, someone is going to get the right one. It's nothing to be afraid of signing a spousal refusal. What happens is Medicaid says, okay, you applied for your husband, you have over the amount, you signed a spousal refusal. They have to accept your husband on Medicaid as long as neither of you transferred assets in the last 5 years, if you need a nursing home. Remember, I said, if you apply for a nursing home, they look and see what you did in the last 5 years. And if you gave away money, assets or property, they say for every $13,000 you gave away, you can't get Medicaid for 1 month. That's what we talked about. If you or your spouse did that, then we're going to have that problem. If you did not give away money in the last 5 years, then they're going to say, okay, well, then we have to accept your husband on Medicaid. And Medicaid is saying, we can come and write you a letter after your husband is on Medicaid for however long. We can write you a letter and say, we want you to pay us back for your husband's care. So in other words, if you are a quote unquote refusing spouse, and you have a sick spouse and you're a well spouse and you signed a spousal refusal and we got your husband on Medicaid, either at home or in a nursing home, that Medicaid can come and write you a letter, but it's nothing to be afraid of, because what is the alternative? A nursing home could be 15, 16, 17, 18,000 a month.
Now, Medicaid is not paying 15, 16, 17,000 a month. They're probably paying more like 8,000, 9,000 a month. Worst case scenario, in the future, they will write you a letter as a refusing spouse, and they will ask you, we want you to pay us back the $8,000 a month that we've spent on your husband for the last year. You owe us $96,000. And hopefully we can we do that. We negotiate it down from there. You may end up paying $60,000 if anything. Now, but you're not paying the private rate of 15, 16, 17. So my point is, the worst case scenario, if you have a spouse and they have to go on Medicaid and you signed a spousal refusal, which means that you're not going to pay, then they can write you a letter. They have the right, and you may have to pay them back at the Medicaid rate. That's the worst case scenario. So no questions yet? I surprised that nobody has any.
No question.
I know, I see. I'm just putting it out there, So again, let's recap. I see some people join late. I want to recap. So Medicaid levels has income and asset levels. You cannot have more than $15,750 in assets. You cannot have more than $895 a month income at home. Oh, so let's discuss the income issue if you have a spouse. So hypothetical, you're in a nursing home, husband is in a nursing home, sick. His spouse at home only gets $2,000 a month, Social Security. Her husband is now in a nursing home on Medicaid, and she says, oh my God, I only get $2,000 a month and I need more to live on. Well, we have that monthly $3,216 level. Oh, well, there it is on that page that is up right now. So maybe this is the right one. Okay, she said it's the right one. I just don't know why I said page 26 and page 26 didn't have the right same thing that's scanned in.
You know what? Remember how I took out the pool plus information on the SGR? So you might have
Oh, okay.
it got changed.
It's still changed.
Stacy, we have a question.
Oh, good. Yay.
Can you share special needs trust?
Okay, so I had talked about before, if you're transferring assets to a trust, which is a special needs trust for the sole benefit of a disabled child, it doesn't count for Medicaid benefits if the senior needs to go. If you have your own, if you're under 65 and you have assets, let's say you came into a settlement, you can transfer assets to what is called a special needs or a supplemental needs trust, your own trust, and those assets will not be counted for Medicaid. However, the catch is that they will allow you to transfer those assets into a special needs trust, but the special needs trust has to say that on your death, Medicaid gets paid back if there is any money left in the trust on your death. That is why those trusts are exempt. Again, the word exempt doesn't count. Okay, so a special needs trust is a trust where you have a trustee, you have assets, you give the assets to that trustee to hold on to. If it's for you yourself, your trustee and you're under 65, you give the assets to your trustee, the trustee holds on to them, uses them for you within the terms of the trust, and your Medicaid benefits will not be negatively affected. If it's a third-party trust, if it's a senior needing to, apply for Medicaid and they have a disabled child and they transfer assets into the sole benefit of a disabled child, that also works. Or, well, we won't talk about outright. Okay, so or I said if you're a senior and you need a nursing home and you transfer assets directly to a disabled child, then you can get Medicaid. But if it's for yourself, it's under 65, it's a special needs trust. Okay, so recapping Medicaid, we have, again, I've said it probably 10 times, assets and income levels, which will be in this paperwork that I can send you with all the levels in it. There is a 5-year look back for nursing home Medicaid. Not a 5-year, not if you have money, don't think, like I said, that you have to wait 5 years. That's what people think. And if you walk away with one idea today, you don't have to wait necessarily 5 years to get Medicaid. If you have money today and you have a spouse, you can transfer it to the spouse and get nursing home Medicaid, even if it's within the 5-year window. If you have a disabled child, you can transfer assets to the disabled child. You don't have to wait for the 5-year window. And if you have a certain amount of money, even like we talked about 130,000, I can say you have to spend 65 on your care, but you can give away the other 65. If you have 500,000 and you need a nursing home today, you can give away 250,000 to a trust or to somebody else. You'll have to use the other 250 to pay for your care during the resulting penalty period. So don't think that you have to wait 5 years. You have to wait for a penalty. You have to pay during a penalty period if you gave away money to someone other than a spouse. But you don't have to necessarily, you have to wait 5 years for the whole thing to be off the table. Let's say you transferred $2 million, just for argument's sake, I don't know who's out there, but let's say you transferred $2 million to a trust or to somebody, and you call me in 4 years and say you need a nursing home. Well, then I'm going to say, pay for 1 year, make it through your 5-year window, and the rest of the $2 million is preserved. So there are a lot of hypotheticals that we could go, I could be here all day on hypotheticals, but I want you to have the basic rules that transfer to a spouse is exempt, transfer of a home. This is another exempt. Transfer of a home in which you live to a child who's been living with you, your child, for 2 years or more before going into a nursing home is exempt. I have many clients who live with their children in a 2-family. Parent lives upstairs, child lives downstairs, or vice versa. We can transfer the house to the disabled child, to the caretaker child who's been living with you. That will not have any effect, even if it's within the 5-year window. Even if you need a nursing home next month, the transfer to the child who's been living with you of the home does not have an effect on nursing home Medicaid.
We have one more question. It says, does the child have to have their own trustee?
Oh, so is this, if we're talking about the transfer, oh, wait, can we clarify, talking about the child to whom, the disabled child to whom
I believe so. It's the same person. I believe so, yes.
So if it's somebody who, if you're under 65 and you have your own money and you're transferring it into a trust, you have to have a trustee. And if a parent is transferring for the benefit of the disabled child, there has to be a trustee. Yeah, they're all, so a trust is an agreement between the person giving the money and the trustee. So you always have to have a grantor, someone who is giving the money, and a trustee who's holding on to the money for the benefit of the beneficiary, the person who you're making the trust for. Does that clarify? I hope.
I think so.
Okay. Oh, I need live people, but it's fine. So, okay, so, but you know, we're going to be doing, all joking aside, we are going to be doing a lot more of these webinars because of, you know, we're doing things remotely now. And, you know, you can always email me a question or through PSS, just email questions. If you can always contact us, we're still, you know, we're still up and running just virtually. So how much time? Okay, so we have about 10 minutes just of my, I just want to make sure that I covered everything that is in the article that I will be happy to email everybody with all the information. So I talked about the income level.
I also do have the article. If anybody can email me from the registered email from the webinar, I can send them everything. So it will be
okay, great.
Because I have all the list of people, so I can share with them.
Great, thank you so much. And yeah, so she said that Zoom is interactive, so maybe, you know, my next one can be interactive if you want. It's up to what people want.
Yes, yes.
Maybe people want to be in their
One-
pajamas, you know, let's face it, in their pajamas and not,
So
but
we can share your video. You just I think because I don't think you have a webcam, so that's why it wasn't.
I do.
Oh, okay. So next time we'll
Yeah,
set it up
yeah.
prior to the presentation.
Okay, yeah, thanks. It's, okay, so again, I talked about nursing home Medicaid versus community Medicaid. To recap, community Medicaid, there is no look back, and transfers to anybody, even someone other than a spouse, for home care Medicaid have no effect on eligibility. So again, that's the difference. With nursing home Medicaid, transfers to people other than a spouse, other than a disabled child, like to a niece, nephew, son, daughter, trust, irrevocable trust, will have some effect on nursing home Medicaid. You will have that penalty period, that period of ineligibility. What else? I just want to make sure. Oh, if you are at home on Medicaid and you don't have a spouse and you have a house, your house is exempt because you're living in the house. We don't necessarily want to keep your house in your name because when you die, it will be probated. If it's probated through a will, Medicaid will recover what they spent on you from your estate. But if you are at home and want to apply for Medicaid, your house cannot be worth more than $893,000. That is the home equity limitation. If there is a spouse living there, it does not matter. Again, these numbers are all in that, in our. Now, I do want to get into now another important thing. So I talked about the financial eligibility for nursing home Medicaid and the penalty period, the 5 years, the exempt people, and for home care Medicaid there are, everyone, you can transfer to anyone. What about what's important? There are two aspects. There's a medical aspect. So let's start with the home care Medicaid, the medical aspect. You apply for Medicaid at home to get an aid. You get Medicaid. We get a Medicaid number in 45 days for you. You are now you're found financially eligible, but first you have to have what's called a conflict-free assessment. The state has to come to the house and make sure that you are in fact disabled and not faking it, because there was some kind of scandal where people were basically riding their bikes to daycare and taking advantage of the system. So they come to your house, they give you a score on an evaluation, and then we have to you choose what's called an MLTC, a managed long-term care agency, okay? That is the agency that will be overseeing your care and that is the company, and they will be sending an agency that they work with to provide the aids. Now the MLTC is going to come and decide how many hours they will award you. Their incentive is to give you less hours because they get the MLTC, the agency gets paid by Medicaid the same amount every month, whether they give you 4 hours a day or 24 hours a day. So for argument's sake, if they're getting paid by Medicaid $4,000 a month and they're coming to see, wouldn't they'd rather give you 4 hours a day for that $4,000 a month, not 24 hours a day. So we have to do a lot of advocacy because they're trying to reduce hours, discontinue hours, not give hours in the first place. They come and do their own evaluation. So it is really highly recommended that you have an advocate there if you do apply for community Medicaid, and then you are trying to get the home care and you have ask for the MLTC evaluation. You should have an advocate there to advocate for the hours, because people don't realize, they're doing an evaluation, they're scoring you, and their incentive is to give you less hours. So that is the medical piece of the community Medicaid. There's also a medical piece to nursing home Medicaid, and that is if you need a nursing home, they're going to look at your finances and want to make sure you didn't make any of these transfers, right, that would make you ineligible. At that point, I would really highly recommend you have to go to an elder care attorney if you didn't do it already in advance. But assuming you have the financial in place now for them to accept you into the nursing home, you have the medical. And that's called a patient review instrument, a PRI. A nurse has to come. Now, if you're in a hospital, they will do it for you. And the social worker in the hospital is supposed to send the PRI to different nursing homes. that you have chosen. If you're at home, there are nurses that come to the home and do the PRI. Okay, so Circle of Care, I'm sure they know nurses. You know, there are people out there who give you these resources who can recommend a nurse to do a PRI for you. And you will get a score, a medical score, and that is what the nursing home will use to determine your medical eligibility for the nursing home.
There's one question, Stacey. Who can be the advocate? Is it the lawyer?
We do it if you hire us to do a home care application. There are people out there known as geriatric care managers. They're social workers. They can be your advocate. It really just depends on your circumstance. I mean, meaning that, you know, financially, if I am going, you know, if someone comes to my office having gone to somebody else to do a Medicaid application because they had assets and they transferred them, they come to me and it's all messed up and all, you know, no good financially, I'm talking. And they went to someone who only did the financial and not the medical piece. We hesitate to get involved instead of just starting over, because I know my work and what I'm going to do. I'm going to start over usually, you know, because things were not done right. If you have someone do it right, whether it's a social worker, whether it's, you know, somebody else, at least, or if you even do your own, I don't know how you would, because I couldn't even do it for my grandmother. I was too stressed. But that aside, if you do your own, figure out how to do your, you know, submit your own community Medicaid application. If you don't have some agency or somebody doing it for you, please make sure though that you have at least a social worker there, because they're very good to advocate for the hours. They're very familiar with those types of things. Please make sure you have an advocate there when the MLTC comes. And again, social workers are great people to do that. Looks like we're almost done. Let me again make sure that I covered. Oh, if you're trying to spend down money before going into a nursing home, you don't have to, but if you're trying to get money out of your name by giving gifts, creating, you know, doing different things, you can prepay a funeral or funerals for immediate relatives, morbid as that sounds, in any amount. You would just have to do it with a funeral home, and they do what's called a pre-plan, and you do it in advance, and you sign a contract, and as long as it's irrevocable, meaning you can't take the money back, you can't go and pay for a $50,000 funeral and then say, oh, I want, you know, I just did that for Medicaid, and then I want the money back. It has to be an irrevocable Medicaid pre-plan agreement that you pay for your funeral and you don't get the money back once you pay. If for people who are really trying to spend down and don't have much extra money. But then I have people who have no money. I have clients and they say, I don't have any money, but someone told me to do a pre-plan. You only do, if you have no money, why would you ask to borrow money from a relative to do a pre-plan? I mean, you're doing that. A lot of times you do the pre-plan to spend down your money if you need to get money out of your name. I talked about the pooled income trust I'm just looking at the sheet that I'm going to, you know, that Circle of Care that can send you as well. See pool trust, again, for that excess monthly income. The income over $895 a month, that's surplus, you can funnel that into the pool trust and they will pay your bills in the community. If you're in a nursing home, one more thing, all of your income has to go to the nursing home, income monthly, unless you have a spouse at home who has under that $3,216 a month. Even if you're at home, I want to make this clear because I don't know if I went over that. The $3,200 spouse needs, the government says the well spouse needs $3,216 a month. If your well spouse only has $2,000 and you have $1,000 income, whether you're at home on Medicaid or in a nursing may your well spouse may keep that $1,000 a month. It's the community spouse, it's in this sheet, community spouse monthly income allowance. Okay, so they don't want, you know, under the spousal impoverishment laws, your spouse is entitled to a certain amount of money every month. If they are short, they may keep the Medicaid recipient's income enough to bring them up to $3,216 a month. Just looking again. Okay, I think I did cover, just in time, cover everything in the handout. Anybody out there?
We don't have any questions as of now. So again, I will be submitted. If you want, whoever wants the article, I can email it to you. And thank you again, Stacey, for a wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you. Please, everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and we're here, you know, if you have any questions, please, we're also here if you need us. We're doing the consultations, you know, via Zoom or via, you know, telephone.
Okay.
Thank you.
If any
Stay safe.
additional question, you can always reach out to Stacey, or you can reach out to me and I can follow up with that for you. All of
Yeah,
you.
my email address is Meshnick. That's S like Stacy, M, Mary, E, S like Sam, H, N as in Nancy, I-C-K. That's S Meshnick at Fatoullah Law, which is one word, F-A-T-O-U-L-L-A-H, law, fatoullahlaw.com, S Meshnick at fatoullahlaw.com. Do I see a question here?
Yes. Do you have a list of Medicaid assisted living in New York, facilities in New York? We do have a list. Do you have that to share, Stacey?
Off the top of my head, I have names. So, or I can email. Why don't you email me and I'll send you the names.
Yes. Yes, you can.
But there's the Boulevard, there's Maple Point, there's Castle and Forest Hills, there's Amber Court.
Yeah, there's many.
The ones that I have seen that are, you know, relatively nice to live in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there are more, but those are the ones that I've seen that I would.
I can think of one. We have 305 in the West End. Yeah, I think. Okay, question. I know that you mentioned about power of attorney earlier. Is NY
Is the state power of attorney short bad to have? It's not quote unquote bad. The problem is that allows people, that is meant for the shorter form from the state without a gift writer and without other modifications is really meant for someone who may not have many, much in the way of assets, and they just need someone to, let's say, pay their bills if they go into a hospital, if they become incapacitated, it's just very limited. So if you have anything in the way of assets that you might want to preserve in the future, I would say, I don't know if I want to use the word, it's just not advisable to have only that, because let me just say, if you don't have a proper power of attorney with the proper powers, then we do a lot of guardianships, which means that families come into us and say, you know what, mom never executed a power of attorney. She has money and she needs a nursing home and she has a house and this and that. We have to ask the judge, which he usually allows in most circumstances. We ask the judge to appoint that son or daughter or husband or wife as a guardian in order to, and the judge gives us permission, the guardian permission to transfer the assets, but it's much easier with a power of attorney with the proper powers. I see the question about 15,000. See, people get confused with that, and I'm glad you asked me that. There is no gift tax in New York, so you can give millions of dollars and have no gift tax, believe it or not. The 15,000 is for people that have multi-millions, that have a lifetime allowance of what they can die with. And the federal allowance is $11,000, I think $850. For multi-millionaires, they're trying to funnel out money from their estate. So when they die, they're not going to have a lot of tax. So they could, if they have 10 relatives, to give $15,000 for free, they're going to give $150,000 a year to those 10 relatives and dwindle down their estate. But there's no gift tax in New York. So if you're not a multi-millionaire, you don't have to worry about giving only 15. That's how we can do Medicaid planning. I can give a house worth $1 million to somebody. So do not worry about the 15,000 unless you're a multi-millionaire, and then we can talk about estate planning for you. I'm so happy you asked this. See, this is why I love having an audience. Okay, good, with the ability to ask questions. Are IRAs excluded? Yes. Thank you so much. IRAs are an exempt asset. I talked about the home being an exempt asset if you're at home on Medicaid, but this is very important. IRAs, 401ks do not count for any kind of Medicaid, not only community Medicaid. It's an exempt asset. We have a lot of teachers as clients. They might have $1 million IRA. Now, remember I talked about many times the income bucket and the asset bucket? The IRAs, as long as you're getting distributions from the IRA, that means you're 70 and a half or over. You're getting your minimum required distributions. It's the distributions that count as income that can go into the pool trust if you have a surplus income, but they don't count as an asset, but they will count the distributions. And if you're under 70 and a half and have a big IRA and need Medicaid, you will have to request that the company use, you can ask me, if you're our client, we give you the Medicaid chart and tell you, call up your company, call up the company, ask for them to start giving you distributions over the next X number of years. Like for example, for a 51-year-old, it's 28.84 years. And that money over the next 28 years will be income counted for Medicaid, but the IRA itself, the asset, will not be. Thank you for that question. Any other questions?
Yes. Wait, you were on the RRA, right? Does TRA?
So IRA, so we have, again, teachers, 401k, 403b, IRA, a lot of the TIAA teacher, crap, that is, if it's a retirement related account, tax deferred account, like your teachers, through your employer, a teacher, if it's a qualified account, meaning, okay, that is tax deferred account, work related, it's not an available asset for Medicaid purposes. Does a pool trust pay for rent? Okay, so this is a good one. I mean, this is getting very specific, but I will. The question is, does a pool trust pay for rent for an apartment that someone lives in with his sons? He's not on the lease, but a tenant. What I would do, again, this is giving legal advice. I don't really want to get into it, but let me say this. A pool trust will not typically, you have to try different pool trusts and ask beforehand before you sign up if you have a special circumstance like this. A pool trust, using your income, your surplus, will pay your bills. Will it pay your rent? Typically, yes. But if you're not on the lease, what I would do is I would have your sons, again, I don't want to say this in a vacuum, but in general, like your sons could sublet to you and you have to pay them rent and the pool trust will pay your sons, for example. But we can talk more if you want to contact me, but because that's very specific legal advice, but they may, you can ask the pool trust I see wife is on the lease. Some pool trusts will do it for a married couple with just the wife on the lease. So you really, if all refuse, then I would have the sons sublease to you or add you to the, there are different options. Okay.
Okay. Let me just click on answer live. So that way we know we answer all the questions so far.
Looks that way. Count. So again, in these today and in this time, like I said, I just did my own trust. I had my power of attorney already, thankfully. Just reviewed it to make sure that, God forbid, I get ill or incapacitated or something happens to me. I have everything in order. It's a good time to make sure you have all your documents and all your planning in order.
Yes, important.
And stay safe, okay?
Yes, thank you again, Stacey.
Thank you, everybody.
The webinar will be posted on our website, and also I have already some emails for whom wants to get the article, but I can share with everybody.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Again,
You do
have a great day.
Circle if you do good work. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.